こんにちは。今アメリカのデトロイトオートショーに来ています。GM のブースで、チャーリー・フリースさん、チャーリー・フリースさんは水素燃料電池のエキスパートとして、今日私のインタビューに答えてもらいます。日本ではトヨタそしてホンダが、いよいよ量産化が始まった水素燃料電池、現在 GM はホンダと提携しています。その GM がどういうふうにこの燃料電池を、今まで引っ張ってきて、これからどういうふうにこの技術を普及させていくのか、そのような話を日本とは違ってアメリカの市場において GM の考えをいろいろと聞いてみたいと思います。チャーリー・フリーさん、よろしくお願いします。政府の補助金が200万があって、東京都が100万出して300万円も補助金でたった400万円で買えてしまう。でもあまりこれをやりすぎると、どうしても税金使いますからもう息切れしてしまう。どうしてもその最初の新しい技術はアーリーアダプターがいますから立ち上がるんですけど、死の谷と言われてその普及までにもう一つ大きな谷を越えなければいけないと思うんですけど、これから日本がそこの死の谷を越えるためにいろいろなことをやっていくと思いますけども、まずその辺の状況を GM として日本の状況を見てどういうふうに感じられていますか？
So, as you said, one of the ways you can incentivize the early adopters is with incentives, and that can be government and tax incentives and different things that help offset the cost of the technology early on before it's mature. And that is a valid way of starting, but in the end, the technology needs to have a roadmap that will make it sustainable. And so the way we look at this is, as an OEM, the thing that we can do is we can drive the cost through multiple learning cycles to bring it down, bring the cost down as rapidly as possible. So our whole program is structured around ways that we can make the technology more affordable for more people. Because in the end, not only does the technology need to be designed to be lower cost, but we need to get automotive scale. So we need to make enough of them so the scale economies start to kick in and provide more cost reduction. So you need both. And so we need an infrastructure that allows enough buyers within a marketplace so they can buy the technology and bring the cost down through volume. But we need, as an OEM, to bring the cost down from design aspects as quickly as possible so more people within whatever market's available can afford the technology and buy it. And that will give those scale economies over time.
GM がずっとこの領域の技術を、2000年前から力を入れて開発してきたのをずっとウォッチングしてたんですけども、一時はトヨタと GM が提携して燃料電池で、しかし2007年頃に離婚してしまって、今度はホンダと、つまり GM としてもホンダとしても、お互いに歩み寄っていかないとこの新しい技術を普及させるには非常にタフなビジネスだったと思うんですけども、一方でインフラの問題があるので、その水素のインフラアメリカではどういうふうに捉えられているんでしょうか？
Well, I think right now it's very early, and there aren't a lot of hydrogen stations available today. Even in the places where they're starting to develop, like California, there still are relatively few stations. And so part of this is that it needs to be awareness. We need to build the awareness of people and make sure that the customers that will buy the cars understand the technology. And we've seen through our Project Driveway, where we put 119 of these cars on the road and we put them in the hands of real world customers, we've seen that when they drive these cars, they can be very transparent. They don't need to think of this as a special vehicle. They can think of it like it's their ordinary, everyday vehicle. It just happens to have zero emissions. It happens to have better fuel efficiency. And the only thing that comes out the tailpipe is water, along with nice performance, because the vehicle drives very well and the customers respond well to that. So you can have a larger vehicle with more utility, and you can have the drive characteristics all in one package. And when people start to understand that and they live with the technology for a while, they do accept the things about hydrogen that are different. And one of those is the refueling is a little different. It's a different nozzle, but it fuels quickly, 3-minute refills. And so
700
for 700 bars. So we've shown that through the course of 3 million plus miles of driving with this fleet of vehicles, we've shown that the technology can be very acceptable to people. And the trick now is just bringing the cost down. It's got to be made, the infrastructure's got to be wider spread. The cost needs to come down for the car and for the infrastructure. And that really is the big challenge.
バッテリーよりも全然リチャージの時間が短いのでメイクセンスだと思うんだけど、ところでよく水素に反対する人たちは水素どうやって作るんだっていうところをかなり攻めてくるんですけど、アメリカではカリフォルニアで今のところ再生可能なエネルギーから作るというのをベースに考えてるんでしょうか。
Well, actually, that's the beauty of hydrogen. We can get hydrogen from all sorts of sources. Hydrogen is just a way to park the energy in a form that we can move it from one place to another and put it on board a vehicle. So the hydrogen, today, right now, it's made mostly from natural gas reforming and making the hydrogen that way. So that's one tool that's available. But that's the bridge. That's the way to do it today. Longer term, renewables are certainly a viable way to do it, and it requires bringing the cost down of the system and also a better way of distributing the hydrogen once it's produced so we can get it to the point of distribution into the cars at the fueling station. So all of that needs to be dealt with, but there are some very good examples in California now, for instance, using sewage water, wastewater treatment plants and using that as a way to form the hydrogen, as well as dealing with the fact that there were byproducts that were produced through the water treatment process, and we can capture that and convert that into a usable form of energy for transportation, which is kind of it's a nice win to have, and you don't have to worry about what you're doing with those gases when they're produced as a byproduct of the treatment process, which otherwise would have been a greenhouse gas. Also, you have wind is a great way to think about capturing energy and putting it into the transportation sector, and it really just requires kind of a big picture perspective. Don't just narrow your focus to the grid or to energy production in general or to transportation. Hydrogen lets us think across sectors, and that's really where the strength comes in, because today wind, if you have wind producing energy for you on the grid, often the wind is blowing when you don't need the extra energy on the grid. So at night, when the wind might be strongest, there isn't that demand. You're not running as many air conditioners or factories and things at night as you do in the daytime. So the peak demand is in the daytime, and that's when the wind is at its minimum. So what we have is an opportunity. If we use hydrogen, we can take that wind that's available, use it all the time that's available, produce the energy, store it in the form of hydrogen, and then you can either choose to put it back into the grid, which actually would not be my preferred path, or you can put it into a car. And if you put it into the car, then you've multiplied your savings in doing that, because you're taking a very valuable transportation fuel and putting it where it does the maximum value, rather than putting it back into the grid where you already have other solutions. So I think hydrogen can be a very good solution that can be much broader than just transportation fuel itself.
Yeah. So hydrogen is one of the electronic storage systems.
Yes.
That makes sense. Okay? ということで、水素は電気の入れ物という考え方で、あと、いろんな作り方があるということで、当面は天然ガスから水素を作ると言われましたけど、ということはシェールガスも一つの水素をシェールガスから水素を作るというような取り組みがアメリカでは考えられているんでしょうか。
Well, I think energy like that, like when you're talking about energy is fungible, right? The natural gas, you can't tell which gas came out of the shale or what came out of other processes. So in the end, it's the more supply there is of gas, the more the cost of the gas comes down. That's better for everybody in whether it's transportation or whether it's in the grid. So certainly shale gas is another source of the natural gas, and natural gas is being used as one of the prime sources for hydrogen today. But even if you look at where we're using hydrogen today as an industrial gas, it's a big component for refining, fluffing petroleum fuels. And so there's a lot of hydrogen available there today. If that hydrogen gets diverted to use in fuel cell vehicles, that's another possible source. So I guess the main thing that you need to think about if you just try to capture the essence of what hydrogen does for you is it's a storage form that's very high energy storage density, and we can go from multiple sources and across multiple industries, multiple energy sectors.
Okay. 昨日ジョージといろんな話フェアセルでしてたんですけど、トヨタはハイブリッドがあるので、その IC のところをスタックに置き換えるぐらいで比較的安いコストで量産化に成功したと思いますけど、基盤となるのは、ハイブリッドパートレーンが必要だと思いますけども、GM が考えるフェアセルビークルマスプロダクションの姿は、例えばボルト 先ほど発表あったようなものがベースになって、スタックが付けられて FC の車になるんでしょうか。
I think any automaker today that has a full portfolio of technologies like General Motors does, that's already making hybrids and battery electric vehicles, using a broad range of technologies, certainly any automaker that has that at their disposal will automatically reuse everywhere it's possible. And so the Volt, our BEV technology, the batteries, it's all relevant because every fuel cell vehicle is essentially a hybridized vehicle. We use a battery system to store braking energy so we can maximize the efficiency of the system. So it does have an onboard battery. It has wheel motors, or not wheel motors, but traction drive motors. It has motors that can act as generators to capture that braking energy and put it back into the batteries. So all of those components do cut across multiple vehicle technologies, and couple that with power electronics and the things that make this work. And yes, we would reuse whatever we have at our disposal so we can bring the overall system cost down and leverage the scale economies.
最後の質問ですけど、例えばテスラのイーロン・マスクが水素やる連中なんか意味がないと言ったり、日本でも、EV メーカーが、その FC に対して非常に批判的なことを言ったりする人もいるんですけども、FC も走ってる姿は EV なんで、うまくバッテリー EV と水素フュエルセルが共存できるそのモビリティの世界ってあると思うんですけども、その辺 GM はもう先ほど EV いろんなものが出てきてますから、どういうふうにフュエルセルと EV あるいはその位置づけるのか、あるいはそのイーロン・マスクみたいな人たちをどうやって水素の意味を説得させるのか。
So that's the beauty of working within a company like General Motors, because we have the breadth of the technology at our disposal, and rather than trying to push a technology because it's all we have, we can use whatever technology best fits our customers' needs. And so we tend to think of this in terms of an application map where you can think about different types of operation by the customer and different types of vehicles. And so on the left side, you might think of things like a lot of stop and go city operation at relatively low speeds and shorter distances. On the far right side, you might think of extreme highway driving at higher speeds, bigger vehicles. Think of that as Autobahn cruising in Europe. And then you can also think about the load that it's required to move the vehicle. And so on the bottom side would be relatively light load, smaller cars, and on the top would be very large vehicles. And if you just think about that map, all of these technologies have kind of a sweet spot where they perform very well. And there's no question, a battery electric vehicle is the most efficient vehicle technology we can put in for a vehicle that's well-sized and has the right duty cycle, the right operating conditions for that. So think of that as a city car, a smaller car. That's where you get that 92% roughly efficiency, and it's a very effective way. But you have to be able to live with the shorter drive cycles. You got to be able to recharge. You have to have a place to plug in. That's one of the things that you need to be able to do. And as you push the vehicle to a larger size or much more high-speed driving, longer distances, then you start to reach the limits of what the battery technology can do. And so at that frontier, that's where we have the Chevrolet Volt, where we have the extended range electric vehicle technology, and we can push the limits of the battery even further with a range extender. So our customers don't need to worry about driving and running to the edge of what the battery can handle. So that's a nice advantage. Eventually, though, if you drive even longer distances, larger vehicles, higher speed operation, eventually you're carrying empty batteries around too much of the time. And that, from an economics and the technology standpoint, that's no longer an advantage. That's where the fuel cell can uniquely fall into that space. So, I mean, one of the best ways to think about this is if you were an Autobahn driver in Europe, how many times do you want to stop during your drive to recharge your vehicle? I mean, just think about this, that the Autobahn is there to travel from one place to another very effectively, quickly.
Yes.
You don't want to stop and have six restroom breaks or 6 stops for fuel or food or fuel. You want to very quickly get from one place to the other. And a fuel cell is a way that you can start to meet those demands with an electrified technology that's very efficient without having some of the limitations that would come with charging a vehicle.
非常に現実的な話を今回伺うことができましたけども、いよいよ2015年、16年、燃料電池の本格的な普及が 日米で始まっていくのかなと思います。その中で、アメリカでは GM、日本ではホンダ、この2つの企業が一緒に手を取り合って、この次世代の自動車の普及に取り組んでいるわけです。その時のキーマンになる方と今日はインタビューすることができました。チャーリー・フリスさん、ミスターチャーリー・フリス、Thank you very much.
Thank you.